All right, so what kind of marching instrument or friend's horn is this? It's finally mine. Yeah, this is my new bass trombone. So it's a Bach 50B. Technically, it's 50. It just says model 50, I guess. Don't know what that means. I think they stopped putting the B on there after a while. It's a corporation instrument, so it's from like the mid 70s to the early 80s. Um, it's actually funny. This is my fourth Bach Corporation bell in a row that I've had on a bass that I've used full time. I guess I like Corporation bells, if not the rest. Who knows? Stock Corporation slide with a stock lead pipe. Nothing crazy about it. Yellow crook, the whole big deal. Slide lock is still on it for now. Who knows? I might take it off later. The cool part is valves. So I don't know how many of you guys know about Brass Lab in New York City, but he's Chuck McAlexander is kind of a famous guy in the brass industry for modifying instruments, making certain things. He's quite the person in that area, and he did the modification on this with first generation OE Thayer valves. These are steel casing, steel core valves with brass ports, which is not how they're made today. Usually they're aluminum or brass. Depends on the maker, and there's no steel in them anywhere except for maybe like the screws. So that's pretty odd in itself. They're also much shorter than you would find on new axials or Thayers. You can see how the tube in between, the connecting tube, is much longer than it is on any other kind of dual Thayer horn you see today. And I have no idea what all this tallies up to, but I really like how they play. I don't know if I've talked about axials that much in my previous videos, but I've never really played an axial horn that I really liked. I've tried Shire's axials, new ones, twice on my old Shire setup, and didn't like them either time. I really wanted to because they I don't know. There's something about them I want to like. They look good, for instance, but I never liked them, and I don't know. I kind of felt bad for not liking Thayers at all, but on this, man, they're just amazing. So that's cool. The valves themselves are really neat. They're not in the best shape. I'm going to get them looked at. We'll talk about that in a second. Also, what's cool about Chuck is that he hand bends all his tubing. None of this is stock OE Thayer parts or whoever makes those now, which you can buy for like $600. They're pretty cheap. And then your tech puts them on or whatever. He makes all the tubing himself, or at least he did when he did this in around 2001. And so the tubing is really cool. If you look at this sweep right here, usually this is a piece here, and then there's a brace connecting this, and then sometimes there's another even piece right here. And this is, like 5 different pieces connected by ferrules, which are, well, I can't find any because he doesn't use them. There's one. This is a ferrule. Usually they're connected by these. This is actually 2 pieces. How dare you, Chuck? I got some nasties on there. Anyway, this is 1 piece, which is just ridiculous. Even the guys I've talked to today are like, man, I wish I had the chops to make something like that, because that's just crazy cool. Just 1 piece. And, maybe it doesn't affect the playability that much. I don't expect it would. But, man, it looks awesome. What's also neat is that, in order to take these valves apart and clean them and, put them on in the first place, you have to make everything removable. And that's why the bell has these little things right here. So you can take the bell off, and then you have to take everything apart this way because the valves don't come apart this way. And I was really confused when I got this, because if you look at this, this tube is soldered here, and then it's also soldered here at this bell brace. And if you look at it carefully, you're like, there's no way to take the second valve apart. It's all soldered together. I was freaking out. Thought I was going to have to take it to somebody to have them torch it apart so I could just take the second valve apart, which seems a little ridiculous. But actually, these are what are called slip joints, where they just slide in and out. It's just like a tuning slide, except a little more secure and not quite as, movable. And it's like almost undetectable. It's like a perfect joint. This is one, and also when I was putting this horn back together after giving him giving it a bath a while back, like last week, not that far back. I couldn't get this screw to meet up with this joint, the F attachment tubing. I was freaking out because I was like, man, there's no way this doesn't line up. I just took this apart. Like, the valves can't be that far off that I can't get this back together. But it turns out this is also a slip joint, and it just moves. I was like, what? Why? So Chuck McAlexander is a troll and likes to make you figure these things out for yourself. What else? Oh, this is super neat. So I have F and G flat tunings, stock. I already talked about that in a previous video. What is really neat is that does not have to be that way. Now I have F and G tunings. Let's see, I think this has to be in all the way. So now I have every fourth position note in first position. And combined, I think they make like a sharp E flat. It's actually flat. So, the first position note's not the useful with both valves. That's okay. I don't play many Ds in first position either. What's really neat is that you get that fourth position note in first position at all times. So you get D's in first position, you get G's in first position, you get, G flats and stuff in second. I can already use first position G flats, but how often do you play D flat in first position? You have to play it really fast. Not that often. So that's a really cool little option. I'm not using it just yet, even though some pretty big names like Denson Paul Pollard, Blair Bollinger, they use a similar tuning. I think Blair Bollinger uses flat G, which is slightly different. But it kind of makes things lay better on the horn. I'm not using that yet because I just learned to solo with G flat tuning, and I'm really used to it, so I'm not going to switch right now. You may have noticed that it's silver plated. This is not a silver bell. This is a yellow brass bell and tuning slide with silver plate on them. That just means there's a few microns of silver plate over yellow brass, which basically means not very much. Microns are pretty small measurement, so that much silver is not really going to affect how it plays or how it sounds. It's basically like having raw brass, except it protects the brass a little better. I polish it every once in a while, but I don't have to, stay on top of it like I would with raw brass. And it also looks pretty cool, man. I don't know. I like how this horn looks a lot. Lots of the yellow brass and nickel and silver. It looks pretty neat. But of course, looks are not why I got it. I got it because it plays really, really well. I went to Noah Gladstone's shop, the Brass Arc, a while back with a friend, and we were trying out horns. He's a tenor player, so he's playing tenors. He's like, wow, these are all awesome. And he only had this as a bass, and I picked it up. I was like, okay, whatever. And the B flat just like rang through the room and entered my head, and I was like, oh, wow. That's amazing. And then I played some more notes on it. I was like, uh-oh, I might have to get this. There's something about how Bach made this horn in the first place and how this conversion went down that it just plays really, really well. The high range is better than my Shires, which was really good at that. The low range is way better. Let's see. The range below pedal F on my Shires was never good. I could play it. I could obviously play pedal C on my Shires, and it would sound pretty good, but I could just never get it to really come out and ring. And on this, it just pops. All those notes do. That's not a huge consideration. You don't need to play low pedals all the time. That's not why I got rid of my Shires. But also, it just, the way the horn glues notes together, legato is so amazing. iffy notes there, but I don't know if you can tell, but legato through the valves, every note is just glued to the next note, which I don't know, I never got the true bores. There's almost an articulation with each one, but it's never legato. So I got this. I traded in my horn and got this, and I'm really happy with it. A couple drawbacks. One, the Thayers are not in perfect shape, and they have almost no seal, which isn't a huge deal with Thayers. It means they take a little more air and some of it escapes, but they still make noise. They don't stop working when there's no seal. I'm going to get them looked at by John Sandhagen, who's a local guy who works with Thayers a lot. That's not a huge deal for me because right now they play really well anyway. And the other thing is it's really, really heavy. I thought the True Bore horn was heavy because those valves are like solid brass or whatever. But this horn is just super heavy. And I've had to like work out a bunch to actually be able to play it for longer periods of time. So there you go. My new horn, shiny silver Bach 50. Hopefully I'll have some videos with some actual, pedagogical insight and stuff coming up soon. Have a nice day, guys.